Next lesson we have is 4-6, which is going to cover rectangles and squares because they are very similar to each other. Okay, so the rectangle has all the properties of a parallelogram, as well as 4 right angles and diagonals that are congruent to each other. So let's start off with the properties of a parallelogram. So it means we have 2 sets of parallel sides. We have 2 sets of congruent sides. The diagonal, sorry, my apologies. The angles are right angles, so that's going to be slightly different from the parallelogram. And so each corner, each angle is a right angle. And rather than the diagonals bisecting each other, they're more specifically, they are all congruent to each other. So each diagonal is congruent to each other rather than 2 different sets. Okay, let's do our first problem. Number 1, which is a rectangle. Okay, and then we fill in all our information. So the top is 2z plus 4. The bottom is 4z minus 8. On the inside, bottom left is 5y minus 2. Top left is x plus 3. Bottom right, 3y plus 8. And then the angles we have, this is 1. This is 35 degrees. This is 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, give you a second to fill that out. Okay, so like I said, you can start with angles first, you can start with sides first. It doesn't really matter. So for this one, let's go ahead and start with sides. And let's go ahead and work ourselves outside in. So the outside information we have is at the top is 2z plus 4, and the bottom is 4z minus 8. And based on the information above, we know those are congruent to each other. So we're going to set them equal to each other. Okay, and then I'm going to go about solving it. So subtract the 2z, my apologies. Add the 8, divide by 2, and z equals 6. Okay, now let's go to the inside. Okay, now on the inside, we don't have as much information as we normally do. We only have 3 pieces of diagonal information, and the information that are across from each other don't have the same variable, okay? But the nice thing about rectangles is that all the diagonals are congruent to each other. So you can set whatever you want to each other within the diagonals because they're all congruent to each other. So we're going to end up setting these 2 together, setting them equal to each other because they're congruent and they use the same variable. So 5y minus 2 equals 3y plus 8. Proceed to solving. Subtract the 3y, add the 2, divide by 2, and y equals 5. Okay. Well, how does that help me solve for x plus 3? Well, if they're all congruent, what I can do with this y equals 5 is I can substitute it into either of these, and so I know what that diagonal is supposed to equal. So if I do that, 3 times 5 plus 8, 3 times 5, 15. 15 plus 8 is 23. So each of these diagonals is 23. So therefore that must mean that x plus 3 equals 23. So x equals 20. Okay, good job. Now let's do the angles.